Hey there, friends. Nibs again. Out here in the garage tonight doing a little bit of goofing around. We got a perfectly wet and rainy day out, so I figured it'd be a nice day to do a little bit of tinkering. And this is a video that I did promise and actually have gotten quite a bit of requests for since I showed these pieces. So I bought these adapters from a fellow on eBay, and if you search for Notos plenum, you will find this adapter kit. You can buy just the plenum if you just want to do that, which is fine, but he sells the whole kit, which is a front end for the barrel and a rear end for the barrel shroud, and also this plenum, which will increase your, he says it's 11 or 12 cubic centimeters, I guess it is. The claim with this kit is that your Notos, which comes with this plastic suppressor that's very difficult to get off. We'll get into that in a minute. But it has a very small tube. You get about 28 good shots before you start really dropping off. It is a regulated gun, and that plenum goes on the regulated side of the gun, but the two claims that he makes with these parts is that you will get, he said about 10 feet per second more. And just fair warning, I've already had all this stuff installed. I'm just going through the installation with you guys, but I did put that plenum on there, and my gun, without making any other adjustments, went from 748 average up to 763 average. So I actually saw a 15 foot per second increase. I haven't gone through and ran it through a full cycle to see if he claims you'll get about one mag more out of the gun. So that would be from 28 up to, so that's 35, about 35 shots instead of 28 before you fall off the regulator. So we're going to go ahead and tear this down, and I'll show you guys how to do this. I am going to get you on a camera up here looking straight down at the tabletop so you don't miss anything. So let me go ahead and get you up there. All right, so here we go. So here is the Notos, and the only tools you're really going to need, you need a couple, but you need a 2 millimeter, a 2.5 millimeter, and a 3 millimeter Allen wrench. So the first thing you want to do is, the first thing we can do is make sure the gun is completely degassed, and then you can, sometimes this might be a little stiff and you might need to get what I have is a pair of these Umarex smooth jawed pliers, and you can get that right on there and that'll break that loose real easy. But mine was loose right from the, not loose, but hand tight right from the get-go. So we can take this off. And now the larger of the three pieces is the air plenum, and that's going to screw right onto the back of your old air chamber. There's already an O-ring he sends installed on there, and that'll seal up the new plenum to the back of the original air chamber. Now we're going to screw that back on there, but I'm going to set that to the side for now while we're working on the rest of this. So now, in order to get this barrel off, there's a little screw here right in front of the loading port, and it's a 2 millimeter Allen wrench. And let's break that loose and get that 2 millimeter screw out of there. Set that down to the side there. And so now down inside here, in that same hole is a 2 millimeter grub screw, And you really got to be careful with this when you're originally doing this. So I was reading about taking this gun apart online, and I read several times that you got to be very careful. Make sure you're holding firm pressure down on this, because this grub screw that's in there is made of some definite Chinesium, and you will strip that out if you don't hold that in there well. So, and also based on the recommendations of those same people that I read online, I did replace this. The grub screw is a 4mm by 4mm, 4mm wide, 4mm tall, and so you loosen that up, and then you should be able to pull the barrel out of the action. So now we're going to set the receiver off to one side for now. And once you have that pulled out of there, you should be able to slide the plastic Picatinny rail and barrel shroud off, and then the actual metal barrel shroud should be able to come off. We'll set that aside. We'll get back to that in a second. So now I've already taken this suppressor off from my barrel, and it is a very destructive ordeal. But what I ended up doing was I used a hacksaw. I clamped the barrel in a vise, and I used a hacksaw to cut down, and you can feel when it transitions from plastic to metal, so you don't want to keep going once you hit plastic to metal. But I sawed down until and then I used a screwdriver to crack the crack open, but that still wouldn't come out of there. So I ended up coming up here where I knew I was above the barrel and slicing across this way. Then I could put a screwdriver in there and just break this chunk right off. Once that chunk came off, then I was able to pry the barrel off from the old suppressor off from the barrel, and it actually comes with these. What's holding it on there is there's two split rings in these grooves. They put the split rings on, and then they mold this suppressor on to the end of the barrel. So if you're squeamish about destroying parts, I would recommend not going down this route, but I really wanted to have the option of putting my own suppressor on there, buck rail suppressor. That's what I'm going to be using on this. So now we can start putting it back together. So there is a transfer chamber right here, transfer port right here. You want to make sure that's down, and then there's a place right here on the top of the barrel where the grub screw is supposed to seat in, and you want to make sure and get that lined up. And there's a couple of O-rings there. You want to make sure they don't get pinched while you're pushing this back together. So that went in straight. So now you take so I had already replaced the grub screw. The other one's out here on the table somewhere. There it is. It really didn't look that bad to me, but the one that I put back in there was definitely a much more beefy piece of hardware. So my Amazon purchase of a grub screw set comes to the rescue again. So now we're ready to start putting it all back together. So now you take there was a little metal ring that went to the back, and then the old suppressor actually supported the front of the tube. But now you take that metal O-ring off, and so we're going to install, doesn't really matter which end goes in which, but this is the front end with the threads for the suppressor on there, and then there's two grub screws, and that's where the 3mm Allen wrench comes into play. screw that on one end, and then you screw this chunk on the back end. Just if it doesn't screw in easy, you're cross threading it and you need to stop. So so now you can take this guy, slide it right on there, and line your grub screws off to one side and the other. Snug that one a little bit, flip it over, snug that one up. It's pretty, this is pretty well machined, so there's very little slop inside of there at all. So, but this, if you don't tighten them both at the same, or tighten one completely down before you got the other one kind of snug, it'll help with that centering. All right, so now we can get our air plenum, or air chamber, put that back on. The order that you do these is really not that important, so there is going to be one more thing I do to this, and I'll probably do a video on that down the road, but I want to make sure everything's working the way it's supposed to before I go and throw any more monkey wrenches in here. But where did I put it? It's up here on the bench somewhere. Where it is. So I have bought another pressure gauge, and I'm going to do it on the other side actually, so when I'm sitting there at the bench I can just look at this. But I am going to drill and tap this new air plenum. I have a drill and tap that I bought off of Amazon right here. It's a 1/8 national pipe thread, and it's got the proper drill bit for it. So I'm going to drill and tap. You want to make sure you got this thing turned all the way in, and then you can put this right on the side. That way you'll always be able to see what your regulator pressure is. And you can watch, because the regulator is set at like 1900 in these. So if you start going below 1900, you know your tank's getting low and you need to top it back off again. That's one thing that's kind of missing on this, is because it is a regulated gun, you really need a regulator air gauge as well. So, but that'll be a project for another day. So now we can reinstall our Picatinny rail and barrel shroud. And 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench. And there we go. That's all back together. Now we can take our buck rail suppressor, screw it right onto the end of the barrel, and we're good to go. Stay tuned for testing down the road. I'll bring you back over here to the eye level camera and we'll finish this up. Alrighty friends, I am back, and I have the Umarex Notos all modified. Well, starting. This is just the start of things. I'm fearing. I'm waiting for Buck Rail's going to be sending me over. He's got a handrail he's been adapting to work on here, and also he's got a replacement arrangement for the whole back end of the gun here to allow the use of his buttstock choices. I think he's going to be able to have a folder and a solid, plus you'll be able to use AR grips on it, so that'll be really cool. So anyway, there you go. A lot of people were asking for this how-to, and there you go. I will do a separate how-to on how to drill and tap the receiver for a regulator pressure gauge, or not the receiver, but the new air plenum. I can see where this is something that you would have to do. It would have to be an end user thing, because you never know where that thing's going to screw on. once you get it on your gun, it's always going to stop at that same place again. So now you can drill and tap it yourself. But as a manufacturer, a person, I don't think you could rely on that hole stopping in the same exact place every time. So I think it's something that would have to be custom done at the end of the end user's gun by himself. So anyway, there you go. Pretty cool upgrade, and not very expensive at all. You can get all three of those pieces for less than $50 on eBay. At least that's how much he's charging now. I really think he's probably charging too little, but if he can make them and make a buck on it for that little bit of money, then more power to him. So hope you guys liked the video. Till next time, have a great day.